Hi everyone, thank you for joining us on today's webinar. My name is Bethany and I'm the Relationship and Engagement Manager here at UMI, and today I'm joined by my colleague Ash, who is our digital journalist.
Hi everyone.
Here at UMI, we help businesses by taking the hard work out finding the very best expertise, information and finance. That's why we're here today with one of the very best experts on brand performance and website SEO. Before we dive in, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A chat box in your Zoom control panel and we'll try and answer them as we go. Now, without further ado, today we're here to explore how you can conduct an SEO audit. And on that note, I'd like to introduce our guests. So today we have Vince from Precept. Hi Vince, would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
My name's Vince. First of all, thanks very much for having me on. I'm the digital director at Precept. Have been for just over 4 years now. So my background is basically website development. Then I've moved into running a studio, been involved in SEO for most of that time as well. I've got a presentation that will support the rest of what I want to say, I think. What we're going to cover today is understanding your website with an SEO audit. So just to continue from obviously introducing myself, I work on behalf of Precept and we're a brand performance business. We have office space in Newcastle and London. What we like to do is we create more value from identity, digital and the marketing activity that's done by a business. And when do we get the call? So we get the call from potential clients for a number of reasons, but mainly they're unsure about the brand, they're unsure about the quality of the brand, they're unsure about the value that they're getting from that brand as well. And what we do is we just take them through our process. We educate to a certain degree as well, and then we put together some work that we can do to improve performance. So in terms of today, what I'd like to talk about is, some might not think SEO is the sexiest of subjects. It can be quite daunting. It can be seen as like dark arts. But if I could just explain what an SEO audit is, and then I'll move on to why someone might need an SEO audit, and then I'll take you through a typical process. In particular, I'll take you through the Precept process. There are many shapes and sizes of an SEO audit. And then at the very end, what I'll do is I'll just mention 5 things that someone can go and check straight away today, just to see if they've got these things in place. And that'll be a good starting point. So I think, first of all, it's just important to mention who this webinar is actually for, because really what this isn't is a comprehensive 200-point checklist of all the different things that you should be checking on your website today, tomorrow, Monday. This is really aimed at maybe business owners, people involved in a business who spend, I suppose, most of the time involved in that business, and maybe looking for a little bit more understanding about the value of the website that they have in place. So typically there's 5 reasons here why audits are actually done. So if you think you could be a business owner who hasn't had a lot of time to learn about the website, you may be somebody involved in a business and the boss has said, we need to do better in Google, which is typically, we get asked that question quite a lot. You might know a little about SEO, but you're unsure where to start with an audit. Audits can often be classed as quite daunting because of maybe some of the technical jargon that is used in audits. So you might have received an audit from a third party who's looking to maybe try and engage with yourselves. And you may not understand what all those elements are. And probably quite a drastic one is your website might have dropped or dipped and you're not too sure why that has actually happened. So I think it's important that, for the types of people that may get something from this webinar, it's not the people that are experts in SEO. It's people that are maybe just trying to learn a little bit more, who may want a few takeaways where they can go and engage with the team or the third party that may be supplying some services to them as well. So if I just move on for what we class an SEO audit as. So in terms of SEO, that stands for search engine optimization. And the audit itself is a list of best practices. It's a list of tests. If you're very process driven, an audit is a very good thing to follow. Essentially with SEO, what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at the effects that adverse elements might be having on the traffic that you're gaining from your website. We're dealing with the organic search performance as well. So they're typically your positions 1 to 10 in Google, for instance, or 11 to 20. I think it's important to note that 75% of traffic comes from those top 3 clicks in Google as well. So getting into that top 3 can have a significant impact on the amount of traffic that a website is getting. At the very end, the audit should create a plan of improvement. There's no point in doing an audit if you're not going to do anything about it. Those should be actionable elements that you can then say from day one, we're fully aware of issues that we've got. You put together sort of like a priority order of updates that you want to do, and then move through that and then measure that consistently through the next 3, 6, 12 months. And like I say, those recommendations that should be actionable. Someone could be able to go away and maybe do 1 or 2 of those things straight away. Or there could be ones that take like months or sometimes a few years in some instances as well. So reasons why an SEO audit may be done. Again, we at Precept, we have all of these as reasons why SEO audits like basically come to us. So a member of a team or a supplier may have done an actual audit and looking to engage with you about that. Third parties, so companies who provide an SEO service may have reached out as a potential sale and said, look, this audit's great, we think there's issues with your current website that we'd like to discuss with you. So again, it's more of an awareness piece at that stage. You may search for yourself, your own company online, and you may think that actually you were number 1 for a search term last month or last week or 3 days ago. And the last time you checked, you were outside the top 10. I think people panic at that stage, and I think it's important to remember that Google constantly changes. It changes hundreds of times every year, and you'll not notice 99% of those. It's usually the sort of big changes in Google that people tend to notice. We get this one a lot. Somebody mentioned that it wasn't easy to use the website. So someone close to you, might be a member of the family or someone in business that you trust, may have said, oh, I tried to get onto your website, or I tried to find this and I found it really difficult. So usability is a huge thing, and it is a big thing for SEO as well. And if you think about it, you work so hard to get people to your website, and if they're struggling to actually use that website, they're going to have a terrible experience. And there are sort of indications to Google that if someone doesn't have a good user experience, you're not going to get the full value from the hard work that you've done. And this last one comes up quite a lot as well. There's always something in the back of someone's mind that something wasn't quite right with the website. They may have had an experience with their current supplier or a supplier before, and they've just got that inkling. And when you present the audit to people that have got this feeling, they feel justified that they were right in the very first instance. Now, they're not necessarily SEO experts, they're just normal users of a website, but they feel as though there was something not quite right at the very beginning. So those are 5 reasons why an audit could be done. And what we always try and do is we always try and get someone to just take a little bit of time to think about these 3 things, because you don't want to start rushing into an SEO audit. You know, we have people say things like, I need SEO, we need SEO. And they need to fully understand what that is and what it is that they're asking for. So we try to do everyone at early stages is we try and ask them these 3 questions, which is, what is the purpose and aim of the website? When was the last time they searched for the website? And when was the last time they actually used their own website? Because what we're trying to do at this point is this is kind of like an educational piece. If we can get someone to get to a certain level of understanding, the conversations that we have after that are different conversations. So if we just touch on what is the purpose and aim of a website. So again, these are 5 ways that websites are used. So it could be a brochure website that's just giving someone an idea of what you do, and that's all it does. You could be looking to be an authority in some kind of area, like a thought leadership. So with that, you should be looking at producing good quality content and something that somebody trusts, something that other websites trust as well. You may have a website that's looking to turn visitors into prospects. It could be a lead generation website as well, so really vital to that business. To sell and increase sales, so you may have been set some targets. You may need to increase by 10%. You may be in competition with other people selling the same product. Again, a really typical one is the last one. We were told we needed one. So the amount of people that I suppose just feel okay that they've got a website and then it's left from day one, and then over the course of months and years, that website has just stayed as is. It hasn't changed with the times. And what we still see nowadays is websites which aren't really mobile responsive. And I'm going to touch on that later on as well. But those sort of people there, they just probably feel comfortable that we've got a website, at least we have one, and it's better than nothing. So I think we need people to fully understand what the value is of their own website before we start to engage with an audit process. And then we ask people to look at their own website, well, search for it first and foremost. So what did they search for? So we're trying to put them in the shoes of their own customer or the potential clients. So what did they search for? Was it their own brand name? Was it services and products that they provide? And then I suppose quite vitally at this stage is like, where were they in the search results? Were they number 1? Were they number 5? Could they not find themselves? If they were number 3, how did that make them feel? Did it make them feel happy? Did it make them feel, oh my word, who is number 1? Is it a close competitor? I think sometimes when you compare yourself against other people, then obviously you have that competitive edge where you need to beat them. But really, what we're trying to justify is number 1 really that important to your business? And that's about doing the research and figuring out when people do find you, what do they actually do once they land on your own website? Should I get a bit of water? And then what words were displayed in the search results? So you get your search results, and if you just take time to read those search results, does that tell you what you want to tell the outside world? I think sometimes people, because they maybe not be aware of the technicalities of some SEO elements, they're maybe not too sure what words are being used. They may see some words on a page, but there are technical elements behind the scenes that they may not have checked. And often those technical elements are then displayed to a user in a search engine. So you should be able to read those words, and you should be able to say to yourself, actually, if I read that, does that make me want to click that link? Does that make me want to click that result and go and find out more about that business or that service? And then really just try and justify to yourself, is being in the top 5, for instance, how important is that to your business? And again, this probably comes down to what type of website that you have, and the value that you put on that website, and I suppose the resources that you look to invest in that website as well. So again, we're just trying to get someone to put themselves in a position where if they came across their own website, is it something they can fully understand? And then once they find the website, it's to then use that website as well, because usability is a really key factor in SEO. And if the signals that you're sending to Google are, we get these amount of people to the website, but they look at one page and then they go elsewhere, or they only spend 30 seconds on our website, they can often be quite negative signals to Google, in terms of somebody didn't quite get what they wanted, or they weren't happy to explore, so they didn't really have a good user experience. So what we're trying to do is use your own website. Like I say, can you find a contact form? If we said to you, go and find this service and complete a form to make an inquiry, can you find a product and put that in a basket and go to purchase that product? You check your website on a mobile laptop and a tablet. Often you can get quite different user experiences across multiple devices. Some killer things for Google is like missing pages. So Google doesn't like to see things that don't have an end result. You need to keep it informed. If you've just randomly deleted an old post from 3 years ago, you should really look to forward that onto the next best thing, or ask Google to remove that from its search results, because somebody saying, I'm interested in this page, and then not finding that on your website, that's not a very good user experience. And again, coming down to something that we touched on early on, has somebody closely reported an issue with your website, or is it a friend? Is it someone within the business? Have they said, look, there's a broken page here, or actually I got to this page, it doesn't make sense? Someone can quite easily, just down to user error, put the wrong link in from one website to one page to another internal page. So I think before you sort of venture into doing an audit, it's really useful to do these 3 things first of all. And I think it's always important just to take a step back. I think at Precept we totally believe in just taking that time to fully understand like the value that your website is creating, and actually could you spot some improvements straight away? Because obviously the word audit is basically we're just looking for things to improve. We're looking to sort of evaluate what we currently have. And if you're a user, then that's as good as we can get at some points as well. So before we progress, you know, I think if you couldn't find your website using a search engine, if you're unhappy where you did find yourself, or once you did find it and you used it, if you didn't have a good experience, or if you found things that weren't quite right yourself, then actually an SEO audit is a really important element for you as well. It's an opportunity to discover areas of improvement as well. So I think at this stage there, I think before you venture onto that audit, it's just try and get as much understanding as you can as well. And like I say, ask friends, ask family, ask people in business that you trust as well. More often than not, if you're going to engage with a third party, they are going to look to charge for an audit, and I think you need to have a little bit of awareness about potentially what things are going to get covered. And I imagine you won't understand probably 80% of it, but the 20% that you do understand, you know, I think that's a good opportunity to learn more about your website and how websites work within search engines. So a typical SEO audit process as well. So I think it's important to note that there's not one audit. They can be huge, they can take weeks, they can take months, they can take a few hours. You can imagine that if something takes a few hours, it's maybe not going to be as intricate as something that's going to take a few weeks. The amount of checks that are going to get done are going to vary. There's apparently 200 different SEO checks per page on a website that are done by Google. So you can imagine that we may have like hundreds of checks to make on a website, on individual pages, on the content, on the words, on the website structure. That can take time. And audits might not necessarily be done by one person, maybe a team of people as well. So I would take into account all of these things that are on this page. So the time it can take, there's not a one size fits all in my opinion. The size of the website matters as well. There's a huge difference between a 20-page sort of brochure website compared to an Amazon with thousands of web pages where you just try to check a load of different elements. There will be consistencies throughout the website, and costs will often come up as well. Now, there are free tools out there as well. So a starting point might be use a free tool, and I'd recommend searching free website audit tool in Google. That'll come up with some. And you know, you can engage with third parties as well. And I imagine like audits will take from hundreds to thousands in terms of a cost element as well. If it's an internal cost, obviously that may be down to more hours and the amount of people involved. But often it's you get what you pay for, I think. And I think the most important thing is whatever audit that you get, make sure that company takes the time to explain that to you. There will be elements in there that are very technical that you may not need to know about, but most of it with some simple understanding and explanation, somebody can explain to you what it actually means. And again, I've referred to it earlier on, the conversations that you have after that are a lot different. You can start to engage with that company or start to engage with a colleague, quiz them, ask them, challenge them. And there's lots of different things that an audit's going to bring up. And because we live in the world of the web, there are like thousands of pieces of software that you can use, some free, some with a cost attached. But these are just some of the typical pieces of software or services that are used. On a Precept, we use all of these. So you can use Google Analytics to find out who's using your website, Search Console, again, another free tool. We can tell you things about your keywords, issues with your website as well. You can do some tests, like mobile-friendly tests with Google. We're going to touch on that later on. There's lots of SEO software, Ahrefs, Moz, SEMrush, Majestic, Screaming Frog. These are all popular pieces of software that will come with free trials for 7 days or 30 days. And then we'll have a monthly fee attached to them, depending on how often you use that piece of software. I think in the instance of Screaming Frog, that might be a one-off fee that can cover you annually as well. So again, there's so much out there. It all depends on if that's an internal team member that's doing the audit process or if it's third party. Most of these will do the same, and then they will have their own little elements that they maybe specialize in, or they feel as though that's what they're better at. So I don't think there's one piece of software that does everything that somebody will need. In my experience, it's a combination of finding a sort of like a good mix between a few. Look at website speed as well. So you've got free tools like Page Speed Insights and Pingdom. And then maybe look at other things like word counts, Siteliner and Copyscape. So just find out like if someone's plagiarizing your own content, find out how many words you're putting on a page. There are lots of clues that Google gives to why they value content. Word count is often a good one as well. So, you know, it's typically the pages that have got 1,500 words or plus that are well written, well researched, that are well optimized, they tend to do really well in the search engines. Sort of thin content, so content that really doesn't explain the search subject that someone's looking for, they tend to not do very well in the search engines. And I think it's clear at this point, for what I'd like to just mention is that at Precept, we tend to concentrate on Google as opposed to other search engines. And the reason being that on mobile, Google has roughly about 95% of the market. And then across like desktop, that can go to about 85%, and these numbers fluctuate. But we tend to spend the time that we have available looking at Google. Obviously, there are other search engines available, but unless requested, we tend to spend most of our time looking at Google and their related services and software as well.
Can I just ask a question? Because obviously you mentioned content a lot there. With SEO, is it always worth having content, even if you've just got like an e-commerce site or a brochure site? Is it always worth having an element of content to optimize your website?
So with a product, you will have content. So the name of the product, you probably have a description of the product, there may be reviews that are related to that product. There may be key elements about that product as well. So inadvertently, there will be content related to sort of an e-commerce product. I think there's always been a huge saying about content is king. Some people still agree with that, and other people say maybe not as much nowadays. But me personally, I'm still a big believer of content. I still feel that well-researched content that addresses search intent, that addresses questions. Between 50 and 80% of searches that are done every day, that user does not know what the answer is. Their questions, their why is, what if, how can I? If we take that into account, that tends to not be a 20-word answer. It tends to be something that you can explore, you can explain, you can say, actually, on this piece of content, we're addressing these issues, but we do have these internal links or related content that we've explored these other issues about that are related. Google loves related content. It loves looking for words that are related to the main search phrase that a user has found as well. So my answer to that is content for me is still massively important, but it has to be well written, it has to be well researched, and like I say, just do searches. You know, one of the things that we do as part of our audit process is we look at the top 3 search results that come up for a search phrase. Actually, how many words have they got on their pages? How many links have they got? You can use the software to find how many inbound links those pieces of content have got. So I often see well-written content means good performance within a search engine.
Perfect, thank you.
No worries. So obviously I've mentioned that audits come in different shapes and sizes. So I'm just going to mention our process at Precept as well. So we tend to cover 3 areas. So the first one is we look at user experience and user interface analysis. So essentially, if someone goes to that website, are they having a good experience? Have we got things in the right place so that user who's looking for a particular element, they can find that nice and easy? Typically, have we got the buttons in the right place? Have we got the buttons in the right color? Are we using the right words in those buttons? Placement's really important as well. Are we looking at that user experience across desktop, tablet, and the mobile device? So mobile devices are hugely important nowadays for most websites, even though we still have a few clients that the majority of their traffic is on desktop, but 9 times out of 10, mobile is where you get most of your traffic nowadays. But what we try to do is we put ourselves in the shoes of the user, and we will use the website, and we will come up with between 10, 15 and 20 elements that we would look to address, maybe look to change. We would look to say, look, if we think this is an issue, and we will give a reason why. We feel as though if this was changed to this, or this could be in the wrong place. And then I think taking that person through this audit process is really important, because if you just get a document and you send it to somebody without taking the time to explain to them, then they're not going to get that full understanding. So we like to do our audits face to face when we present to the customer. So we can use our hands to make something feel a lot more important. We can raise our voice. We can address questions there and then. So I think at this point here, user experience, right? Okay, so someone lands on the website. Have they had a good experience? Are they likely to look at more than one page on that website? Do they get what they want? And as we move through to the next stage, which is more technical, so technical SEO is a big part of improvement as well. So we have a technical process. We have technical checks, and those technical checks tend to cover accessibility, which is are the pages on your website accessible to search engines. We look at indexability, so how many pages is Google aware of? Again, I'll just refer to Google as a search engine. So how many pages is it aware of? How many pages have you got in your website sitemap are you telling Google about? And does that number correlate with what Google knows about as well? If there's a huge difference between your sitemap, the number of pages that you have in that, and the number of pages Google knows about, that's often as a result of somebody having a website for years and years and not really doing any TLC, not doing any good housekeeping. It tends to mean that they've deleted pages and not sent the user to the next best page. So what we often find is that there's usually an opportunity through that second stage is if we see a big gap between what Google knows about and what you're telling it, and using third-party software to basically crawl your website, to look at your website, and to list all the pages it can find as well. Is if there's a huge difference between those numbers, it's definitely worthwhile finding out why that is. And a normal person can do that. A normal person can see 3 numbers on a page, and they can say, wow, well, those numbers are quite different. And then it's a matter of just trying to address why those numbers are different. So again, using a search engine, you can just go through all the results of your website, and I'll later on, one of the 5 tips, I'll show you how we can do that. And then the final bit that we do as part of the technical bit is to look at on page, look at the characteristics of a page. So again, it comes back to what Ash said earlier about the content on the page as well. So we're looking at certain things on the page to say, actually, is this page about this keyword or this key phrase? If so, why is that keyword quite far down the page? Why is it not in is it not in the main title of the document? Why is it not mentioned in the first paragraph? Why don't you mention any related services or words to that key phrase as well? So I think at this stage, if we can then give someone an idea of how the web works, what a search engine is looking for, and how it's looking to value what you have done, and can we start to find issues, i.e., if we come across an error on the website, bad user experience, that will come up in this part of the process. If the website is missing pages, this will come up in this part of the process as well. So I think if people will understand things like errors or missing pages, they may not necessarily understand the importance of a speed loading on a website. Now, as people, we don't want to wait around. Google likes pages to load very quickly, so the quicker the better. So probably less than 2 seconds if possible. The nature of humans is that because we don't want to wait, we will just see something. If we're waiting for it to load, we will click the back button, and then we will just look at the number 2 search result. If we don't get what we want, then we'll go to number 3, or a percentage of people will just give up at that stage frustrated. We want to avoid that frustration. We want a fast loading website across desktop. We want it on a mobile. Think of 3G, 4G, 5Gs it's here now. As long as people don't start ripping down masts and things like that as well, which obviously is in the news. But speed is a huge thing as well, mainly as a human issue. This last bit is, if we go through that, we're telling people, first of all, that we're acting as a user. Here's issues as a user. Secondly, we're acting as a search engine. Here's issues that a search engine may have with your website. Now, at this point here, we try and give them an idea. We try and give them some numbers. Now, obviously, they may have seen some numbers earlier, but if we can start to say to them that since day one of your website, you have built up this amount of value. People understand value. People understand that they're working 60 hours a week. They're working that because they're working 60 hours a week, they maybe don't see the kids as much, or they don't get to do as much with the partner. They understand the cost of things. And so if we can give them that value, then they can feel good about that, or they can see areas for improvement. They can see, right, actually, my website was just a thing, but actually now that I can see that I have got a certain amount of value, how can I improve on that value? They start to get an idea at this point that improvements can bring some positive change for them. And ideally what we do is we do this against some competitors. So we ask them to provide us with some competitors, because again, it comes down to human nature. If we compare ourselves to somebody else, it's very easy. We can say to them that your website is currently, around this sort of value, but competitor A is here, competitor B is here. Oh, by the way, you're better than competitor C. That'll make you feel a little bit better. And it's then, but not to dwell on that too much. But this is, if we've lost some people beforehand, this is certainly the area where we can start to educate like the normal person a little bit more as well. And at this stage here, what we do is we tell them about authority. We tell them about reasons why the website is building up value. So often links coming from other websites to your website are a really good example of how authority is built. Google likes to see high-performing websites linking to other websites as well. It's intrigued by that. So we just give them an example and say, this is one factor that may be helping or hindering your website in terms of the value that it's creating. And what we also do is we also bring in some social media stats as well. Now, there is information out there to say that social media value doesn't necessarily impact on SEO value, but it certainly does have it is an awareness piece as far as we're concerned, because what we often see is we can find out which channel or which element has got the most engaging people and customers. So if we think that's more LinkedIn as opposed to Facebook, then it seems sensible that you would probably put more effort into one of those if you're getting more from it at the end of the day. Or if you need more exposure on a platform, if that's not happening at the minute, looking at, we can look at the site stats and look at where these people have come from and get a better idea of how they're performing on the website. We can start to put a plan together. How do we address this? And then once that plan is being addressed, we can look to measure that as well. So I think this bit is important, because we need to get back to some kind of normality for like a business owner, because they will understand most of this last section. And then, like I say, we can move forward. We can put a plan of attack together, put that plan in terms of a priority. And then probably the most important thing after that is we break it down into those tasks, and then we can show improvement and we can show development throughout the course of months and maybe a year as well. So that's that. Is there any questions at this stage about anything covered in like that? That's a Precept process. That is, like I say, we could have hundreds of other SEO companies in the room. They will do some of that. I imagine they would do most of that. They may specialize in more sort of like local areas, or they may specialize more technically in SEO. But for the majority of what we do is we feel that's enough. And I can just share 5 checks that we do that as a business owner, you could go away right now in the next 10-15 minutes and you can do these yourself. So number 1 is just make sure that you've got a secure certificate on your website. So most people recognize this from looking at the address bar in a browser. Is the lock there? So if you typically just go into a browser, type your own website address, make sure you put the HTTPS in there, or if your website is just found by searching for yourself, If that padlock is there, you will have a secure certificate. And the reason you have that is Google gives a boost to websites that have security in mind. If there isn't a padlock in place, you still may have one available, but it's not set up correctly. So speak to your web developer, either the internal person or the third party that has provided your website. To give you an idea on price on that, there are free certificates that are available nowadays. There are ones that will cost hundreds, and there are ones that will cost thousands, and that's typically an annual fee. So something like that, you could go away after this is done. You could check that straight away, and if it's not there, engage with the person whose responsibility that is. Do that, and you will get a slight SEO boost from Google. So that's number one.
Sorry, can I just ask, what's the difference between getting a free certificate and like paying quite a bit of money for one?
So it's usually the level of security that the certificate provides. Algorithm-wise, like I say, I'm not an expert on security in terms of SSLs, but in most cases, a free one or the very standard one will be enough for most people. Cool. Because the website isn't NASA or NatWest or any other banks or any other space agencies. So, like in most cases, the standard one will do fine. I think it will be up to the business itself. If they have a security person involved, they will decide whether or not they need to go to that next level and decide on what value they want, or engage with the certificates providers, explain to them what your requirements are, and they will then recommend what the best certificate is.
Great, thank you.
No worries. So mobile friendly test. So again, just open a browser, that link there. If you add that in, that will bring up the mobile friendly test that's produced by Google, which is what it looks like on the far right hand side there. You just add in your own URL, click the button that says test URL, and it will tell you if your website is or isn't mobile friendly. So it's a really simple thing. It takes about 30 seconds, maybe less. And it comes back to Google valuing mobile friendly websites, and that is a major SEO ranking factor. So just a simple test like that, any person can do that. My advice is if you do that test and your website isn't mobile friendly, go and speak to your web development department, go and speak to the supplier of the website, and look to address that as soon as possible. I think these first two are easy to recognize and really important in terms of SEO. This next one's a key factor as well. So people may not often be aware that they could have multiple versions of their own website. So what we ask them to do, or people can go and do this right now, get your website address and try those 4 versions of your website in a browser. The perfect element that we're looking for is no matter what you type in, it will forward to a primary version of your website. So typically what we'd like to see is one of the last 2. So with the HTTPS, because that tells us that they've got the secure certificate in place. So we're ticking that box. And then either with or without the www. And that's the decision for that. It will be down to the business owner or down to the technical person within the business. What we'd like to see is that like I say, one of those exists, and if no matter what you put in, it forwards to one of those, then great, we have what we want in play, which is one version. If as a user I can see multiple versions of the same website, essentially that's what I'm telling Google. I'm telling Google that I have the same website 2 or 3 times, and we want to avoid that, because what we want to do is we want to make sure Google knows that we just have this one version and it can concentrate all its efforts onto that one website. So we need to, that's an important one as well. Again, the check's easy. Fixing it, speak to that technical person in the website who can look after the website, or the third-party supplier, and all they will do is they will ask you which address do you prefer. Go with one of the last 2, and then they will forward the rest to that one, so it will be done perfectly from an SEO perspective. 4, speed. So in terms of page loading speed, it's really important, because most people will not have a clue what is loading in the background to make a website look easy on the eye. There are lots and lots of page loading tests. There's some from Google. We use this one from Pingdom alongside others. It's very simple to use. You just put your URL in the box, you select a destination, choose from one. I think there's 6 that you can choose from. And then the results start to look like the image on the right hand side there. It'll give you a grade, A all the way to F, I believe. It will tell you how long things took to load. It will tell you which elements of the page are loading at what point as well. My advice at this stage is do that, log that information, get an idea. So most people will understand that D doesn't seem like a good result. I got a D in GCSE art, and I don't do art for a living. So people will understand A tends to be good, really good. B, slight room for improvement. C, more room for improvement. D, we need to do a decent amount of improvement. The test there, along with other speed tests, will give you indications of if it's an issue with images taking too long to load, if it's the various scripts that are required to make a carousel spin round. Someone should log that. I say someone who knows what they're doing, like i.e. web developer, should log that, and the updates that you would do should be added to the actionable elements that you've found in the audit, and you should start to work through that. And then what you should do is, a few weeks later, a month later, is redo the same test and see if that D has actually gone up to a B, and utilize as much as you can to increase the opportunity to really reduce that loading time for a user. So that's really important as well. And then number 5, just a simple one. So open Google, and in the address bar, just make sure you do site : and then add in your own web address. And what it will do is it will tell you how many results it knows about this website. So the graphic on the right hand side, I've just used the Precept domain name, and that's telling me that it knows about 42 pages in our website. Now, if that said 142, and we know that we've got a 42 page website, what are those other 100 pages? Now, you can just scroll through these results here, or again, use some software can do this as well. But as a starting point for a business owner, if you do this, and you know for a fact that your website does not have that amount of pages on it, then just add those 2 numbers to a spreadsheet, and then you just need to figure out what those additional pages are. And more often than not, those are old pages that probably maybe don't have a lot of value, or something that's been completely forgot about. And you just need to first and foremost just be aware of what those pages are, and then discuss with the team, the internal team or the external team, can we look to address these? Because ideally what you want is you want those numbers to be as close to what you have as possible. And it's typically what happens with a website over time. So websites will start off with maybe 10 or 20 pages, and you'll add 5, you'll add 10, you'll take away 2, you'll add another 30 per year. And over the course of 10 years, that website may have grown from 20 pages through to 200 pages. And what we often recommend, when we do the audit, is it may be an opportunity to do a bit of a page cull. So using different elements of data, so you can use your Google Analytics. Does that page get a lot of traffic? Has it got a lot of traffic in the last year? You can look at where that position of that page is in Google as well. If that page does not have a lot of value, and if people don't visit that page very often, and those that do don't really spend a lot of time on that page, then you should really consider whether that page has a value on your website. And what might have happened is your service offerings may have changed over the years, and your website is what you were 5 years ago. If Google's changing constantly hundreds of times every year, you should maybe look to change with that as well, if that's aligned to the business and the needs of the business. So those are the 5 tips there that I would recommend that people look at, and I say they can go and do those straight away. The offer that we're making from Precept is that my email address is vince@precept.co.uk. More than happy to answer any questions. I'm more than happy to engage with people. It won't be a sales thing. It won't be, great, we're going to stick you on a list and pester you until you get one of these. But we are offering audits for free. We have about 20 spaces available. They can be for anybody. We'll take you through our Precept process. We'll do the audit. And then what we'll do is we'll organise a Zoom call, and we will take you through that audit with no obligations to go ahead with us. Especially in the time that everyone's in at the minute. Obviously, businesses may be struggling. They may be looking to get back to work. the situation may have given them some time to take a step back and review the website, review the value of the website as well. So we'd like to support that as much as we possibly can. So so these are the things I would like to take away. So final things, decide how important your website is to your business. It should be, but it may not be. How in depth do you want the SEO audit to be? So have a think about time and cost of that as well. Have a think about free tools as maybe a sort of like a starter level. So whoever's done the SEO audit, understand as much as you can. So, you know, again, with this webinar being aimed at business owners, we know that you probably have more important things to do, i.e. generate leads and generate money. But if you want to take an interest, just engage with the people that have done this SEO audit. What you can do is you can ask them for their opinions on what's the most important and where will you get the most gains. So review those recommendations and action in a priority order. And there's no point in doing that unless you're going to monitor the progress. So agreeing a time scale. So SEO, most of it does not happen overnight. So you're looking at, you will need time. And the education of the business owner is really important at this stage. So for people doing audits, just be very clear to somebody, just to say, look, we have an expectation that this could take a few weeks, it could take a few months. But with Google in particular, they make so many changes that a piece of content or a change that you do today could have more impact next week. They've constantly made changes throughout the years, changes on the quality of content, the changes on spam, the changes on medical or healthcare types of website as well, natural wording, the way that people interact with words. So these are huge things that have had updates over the last sort of like 7 or 8, 9 years. And ultimately what we need to figure out is what can we do to give Google what it wants and give that customer what it wants as well, because if you get in that top 3, that's where the traffic tends to be in most cases. And like I say, we're just SEO, we're concentrating on organic results, the free results, the results that you're working hard to get, and we're avoiding anything paid at this stage. And there we go, that's me. And that's an SEO audit.
Just before we wrap up, Vince, I do have one question. So going forward, how is the growing popularity of voice search likely to affect SEO?
Right. Okay. So so voice is important. So again, as things like Google Home, Alexa are in the home, or basically people shouting at their own phone and things like that as well. So there's a lot of information saying obviously voice search is growing all the time. I think it is related to people probably don't want to switch a laptop on sometimes and type something in when if they can just say, I've got to be careful, okay, to say it because I do have Google Home behind me and it might try and answer the question. But if you can ask something and something will give you the answer within 10 seconds, that alleviates our human nature that we want something really quick. I have to be careful what I say, but my son often uses it for his homework as well. So you can get an opinion, which is good. But he doesn't cheat on his homework. I've got to be very clear about that. So as we move forward, voice is really important. So certain SEO elements, like the way that your website is structured data elements as well, which we can tag information, getting those search results as a featured snippet is really important for voice search as well. So things like that will just only keep on growing. And you know, if you have grandparents who use it, I think that's a massive sign of how the world is changing, because people of a certain age may have been frightened of technology, whereas nowadays they're more than happy to ask Alexa to play their favourite playlist, or can you add this to my shopping list? What is the cost of this? What was the #1 hit when I was born in 1977? So there's loads of things like that as well. But the real answer is, because I don't work at Google, we don't know the full implications of their algorithms and things like that, but it's here to stay, and it will constantly just improve as we move forward.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you, Vince, for joining us today. It's been really valuable. And, you know, you've shared a lot of tips that are going to be actionable for people that have been tuning in. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
No, the only last thing would be, I say, if you want to know more about our free audit, this sounds really salesy, but it isn't. It's genuine. We have about 20 places that are left at the minute. we're like I say, we're more than happy to put it in. We generally are going to have real people doing the audit as well. So we use tools to support it, but real people are going to use the website. Real people are going to do the tests. So the link that I've got on there will tell you a little bit more about what we do. But even on that page, we're asking you to email myself. So if you are interested, please email me. Just explain that you want the audit, and what we can do is we can start to engage at that point as well. And the last thing I would just say is don't be afraid, don't be frightened. I think one of the biggest things is realizing that you do want to know something. And again, as people, we're often very frightened to ask for help, because we're either going to be frightened of what the answer is going to be, or we're initially just very frightened. We might be quite shy as well. But send an email to someone's not the most difficult thing in the world. Reach out, and we can get that booked in. And if you do have any questions, like I say, email me, and I'm more than happy to answer those as well. So that's the last thing is, like I say, there's an opportunity here. If you're thinking of making changes to your website, before you do make those changes, I honestly feel an audit will be a good place to start, because the changes that you make might not be the ones that you think you're going to make in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, I just like to end it on that as well.
Great, thank you. And we have had some questions, but we're running out of time. So you'll follow up with Vince's contact details, so you can send those questions to him. And if you'd like any more information, we have a number of articles and how-to guides to businesses on marketing. If you go to our website at www.weareumi.co.uk. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.